Thank you, Ben. Almighty God, we celebrate the bountiful riches of our city and region and rejoice in the diversity of many nations who call Tamworth home. We thank you for the men and women of our council who serve our communities. Bestow wisdom, courage and boldness as you direct their leadership and deliberations. Bring hope, fairness and prosperity to all people who live and work in Tamworth Regional Council. In the name of our Lord Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Bobby.
Declaring the meeting open, I'll ask for apologies and leaves of absence. There is nobody away, so we move on to item 2, community consultation. Tonight we have no members of the community that wish to speak, so I'll move on to item 3, minutes from the previous meeting. Could somebody please move the minutes from the previous meeting? Councillor Mears, second, and Councillor Rodder. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Move on to item 4, disclosures of interest. Is any councillor here wish to disclose any interest in pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in the business paper tonight? There being no disclosures, I'll move on to the mayoral minute. Tonight there is no mayoral minute. I'll move on to item 6, a notice of motion. We do have a notice of motion from Councillor Mark Rodder. Mark, if you'd like to speak to your notice of motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, I'd like to move this...
Sorry, I'm looking for a seconder first. Councillor Mears. Now you can speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move this recommendation with a slight amendment that in the last dot point we include a report, that a report be produced back to council after our workshop, just to finish this whole process off. If the seconder was happy to add that small amendment to the last dot point, I'll continue.
Councillor Rodder, that would normally be the normal process. We're following a workshop. A report would come back to councillors for further consideration, so thank you for that. Anybody wish to speak against the motion? Anybody wish to speak for the motion? Any further comments? Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I support the motion. I think it's a good idea that we really review it so that the new councillors can have the input into the decision that was made before. Yes, we need to make some changes, but I thought we agreed that the workshop, or the induction, that we were going to have a workshop anyway, so certainly support the motion. But one of the things that we really need to do is so that all councillors can get the facts, because there is a cost to this. There really is a cost to the community, not only in dollar terms, but in lost opportunities for recycling. And it's not just a thing that you take it to the tip and it goes somewhere. There's $1 for every cubic metre that's at the tip. So we really need to make sure that we do get it right this time. And there's a huge opportunity there to look at involving people like Challenge and a whole heap of other organisations, and really look at the recycling side. So thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tickle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Bulky goods collection, as Councillor Betts has just mentioned, was discussed with all the councillors at our recent induction, wherein we all agreed to move forward with an updated alternative that would serve our community well. All councillors agreed to support a new, improved service with maximising recycling, a critical element of that service. Our community has embraced recycling, whether it be water or waste. We must continue to move forward, support and educate our community in their recycling efforts. The federal government is currently running an advertising and educational program, you may have seen it in the media, showing how unwanted goods and waste can be turned into a commodity. Depositing unsorted bulky goods into a pile on a verge is not the most effective practice. We know that this practice has resulted in very little recycling. A number of improved options for bulky goods collection are being explored. We must continue to provide a service. The public's told us that they'd like to see a service. However, the service has to be of benefit to the whole community, and we have to think of our future. We've got to be sustainable. We can't return to the old ways of people picking over a bit, rubbish strewn everywhere and unwanted goods. We must improve our recycling. And it could be a system that we didn't have before, but get a service of picking up goods, and in particular recyclable goods. So a number of councils have various systems in place, I guess like our own. Many are still exploring the new ways, but we have to look forward. We can't return to the old, but our public do require the service for that bulky goods collection, but we must ensure sustainable practice, and we must be thinking of the future, and we must continue to recycle.
Further discussion? Councillor Rodder, I'll give you the right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This recommendation commences a process for council to consider restoring the bulky waste pickup service. As we all know, a service that was popular with a large part of the community that utilised it. Obviously, there are plenty of considerations: recycling to reduce landfill, modernising it so that it is not a curbside mess for weeks on end, extending alternatives to residents who didn't receive the service, possibly working with other organisations or agencies to deliver it. I was asked about how many utilise the bulky waste service to how many pay for it, because that concerns some, but ultimately that is an argument we can have with every service provided by council, including pools, parks, art gallery, museums or theatres. This was a popular service with residents without access to a ute or trailer and helped reduce illegal dumping, and I commend the motion to council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rodder. Well, that closes the debate. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Moving on to item 7.1, proposed road names. Could I have a mover? Councillor Tickle, second Councillor Rodder. Wish to speak to that, Councillor Rodder? Oh, sorry, Councillor Tickle. Anyone wish to speak against the item 7.1? Anyone want to speak for item 7.1? And there's no discussion, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
No.
Those against? Carried. Moving on to items 8.1. Tamworth Regional Local Traffic Committee. Could I have somebody move the motion? Councillor Betts. Seconded Councillor Mears. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Betts? Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Anybody want to speak for the recommendation or further discussion? Could I might just ask Murray, if I may, because I know that some would have read through there and maybe wondered, but I'd just like you to describe a little bit about the speed limits out there with the 60 and 50 k's so that people fully understand what that meant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It does seem slightly unusual that the design was done based on a 50 kilometre speed limit, and then we've been advised that it's likely to be 60. The Transport for New South Wales actually set the speed limits, and we need to do the design for the subdivision before that process is actually formalised. So our designers undertook the design based on what they thought the speed limit was likely to be. The Transport for New South Wales, although they haven't formally set the speed limit, have advised us that that would be slightly different. But the only real change will be there'd be some slight adjustment to the location of some of the signs and a few minor details like that, which doesn't really affect the content of the report itself.
Thank you, Murray. There being no further discussion, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Move from there to item 8.2, Natural Resources Commission. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Councillor Southwell, could I have a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Coates. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Southwell?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? Question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to not making a submission, I wonder whether we should be making one in relation to the flexibility of the Peel Valley Water Sharing Plan, particularly as we saw during the drought, environmental flows and things of that nature. It was during the drought that we saw the impact of some of the negative features of the Peel Valley Water Sharing Plan. I also have personally concerns about the possible amalgamation of both the Peel and Namoi Valley Water Sharing Plans. I realise it's not mentioned in this, but I believe that if that did occur, that would be quite detrimental to the residents, farmers, businesses and industry in general within the Peel Valley, if that was the case. And I was wondering whether it's actually worthwhile expressing that concern as well.
Councillor Rodder, I might ask our director to make a comment, but these are all unregulated streams. It's not part of our Peel River stream that feeds into the city. But Bruce, would you like to make some comment on that?
Mr Mayor, yes, you're quite correct. Councillor, this is for the water sharing plans for the Namoi and Peel unregulated river sources. So the issues and the comments you're making in relation to the Peel regulated source, the Peel River, and the Namoi regulated source, that's the upper and lower Namoi, they're not covered in this water sharing plan that we're talking about. This is Gunnaganoo Creek and all the other unregulated sources that are in the Peel and the Namoi. So whilst I agree with you about the issues associated with the regulated river source, this is related to unregulated rivers, and therefore it would be inappropriate for us to make those comments in relation to the water sharing plan that they don't cover.
Further discussion? Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I agree. We don't want to put a submission into this one because it is unregulated. But I tell you what, we all need to get up on top of the lookout up there when the regulated one is up for review, because that is probably one of the biggest inhibitors to our water supply, the water sharing plan, and that's the one that we really need to make a song and dance about. But certainly, it probably is inappropriate really to put one in on this one. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Betts. Further discussion? Then I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. 8.3, moving on to 8.3, new Dungowan Pipeline Interface Agreement. Could I have someone move the recommendation? Councillor Burke. Councillor Tickle. Councillor Burke, do you want to speak to the...
No, to support the motion.
Anybody wish to speak against the recommendation? Any further discussion on the recommendation? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to the pipeline, is there any clarity yet about who is going to own and manage the pipeline moving forward? All these are all still preliminary steps in the process.
Councillor Rodder, I'm not quite sure where that's up to, but this certainly hasn't got anything to do with that ownership, but I might ask Bruce if he might make a comment on that.
Mr Mayor, I think the short answer is no. I imagine, I haven't received confirmation from Infrastructure New South Wales that we will operate this section of the pipeline. We don't operate the Chaffey Dam pipeline, for argument's sake, so no, we don't know.
Thank you. That was I guess where I was leading, because we see how the Chaffey Dam to Kalala pipeline is managed. It would be better managed if it was utilised.
Probably subject to further discussion into the future, Councillor Rodder. Further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll put that recommendation. Those all in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Moving on to 8.4, review of residential, business and commercial water saving rebate. Could I have a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Southwell. Councillor Sutherland, sorry. No, I'm Bob thinking. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Southwell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will speak to that. I think the number of rebates for residents and businesses is fantastic. It was good to see that we extended those, the previous council extended those. I know that it can be a bit more expensive, some of these things for, for council in terms of the actual amount of money per litre and things like that. But I think individuals want to feel that they are doing something to contribute to water saving, particularly during the drought and things like that. So I just think it's good to extend this offer to a number of the community. It's great to see that report was really, really good to see in terms of how where our funding has actually gone, and evaporative air conditioner services and maintenance, for example. It's great to be on top of that. That's just having an all-round benefit in terms of reducing power and other benefits as well. So I just think overall good report, and it's great that we're extending that for the community so that they can basically improve and reduce water savings. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Southwood. Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? No. Any further discussion on the recommendation? Councillor Tickle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with the comments of Councillor Southwell, and this is something our community has embraced over many years, and particularly with regard to recycling, as the consumption figures show, despite our population growth and the increase in water connections, well over 20 years, we've barely seen an increase in water. So the community is to be commended for that. And the community has said over and over again that they want to be responsible and they want to save water. And the recent survey, 53% of the respondents said their main reasonings is to saving water is to avoid restrictions, and also not only saving water but by using very efficient appliances and other systems. The second utmost reason was that they considered they had a social responsibility to save water and to extend our supplies through recycling and other means. So that social responsibility at some time has to come into play when we're reviewing these rebates. In the drought, it's been great, and our team here in council have done a wonderful job with advertising and educating, and we have seen substantial savings. But I'm just glancing down to evaporative air cooling, and I know this has been raised before. It is a very generous rebate for what essentially is a maintenance problem. So I think at some point, and within that 5 years, and the director may be able to advise on this, we can revisit these at any time. Like we're saying, to have the scheme for 5 years, but it's not to say, and I've received clarification on that we can't revisit any of these.
Mayor, the council can change whatever they like,
We
whenever
can change
they
whatever we
want.
like. So, in view of my comments about the respondents, 53% felt they had a social responsibility to be saving water, implementing water saving devices. At this stage, I would like to think that our community now is very well aware, for example, of what evaporative coolers use, how much water they can waste, but also be aware of responsibility to maintain them, just as you maintain any other part of your house. We subsidise a plumber to do a water audit, fantastic, $100, but we don't turn around and say you can have $200 to fix the leak. So I think that somewhere along the line we need to revisit some of these, but it's been a wonderful take-up. I know the community are very appreciative, and particularly young people getting into their first homes. A number have said how they've used grey water recycling and how they've installed tanks, and this certainly has helped them. So it is a good scheme, but just for the benefit mainly of new councillors, this can be revisited within 5 years. We can add or detract.
Thanks, Councillor Tickle. Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Totally agree with Councillor Tickle. Excellent report. Always is out of the Water Directorate. Every chance I get up and if everyone looks at page 17, the graph on page 17, and I say this every time, since 1991, the water consumption actually is falling. The potable water consumption is actually falling. And councils over the period since 1991 have done a whole heap of things. One is changing the pricing structure, where the more you use, the more expensive it becomes, so that was an incentive. But one of the things that really has driven is public education. Public education has done an enormous amount to reduce the amount of water, and this program is absolutely fantastic. Council itself has done a lot of work too in reducing the demand on water by a lot of water conservation measures with different areas of the sporting fields. But one of the things that we really need to look at, and what I wanted to just ask is, I agree with Councillor Tickle, we were talking about it earlier, the evaporative coolers, yes, that's $100,000. We were going to get a report on just how much that actually saved, because at the time when we introduced it, it wasn't a quantitative result, it was really only a qualitative thing that we thought was a good idea, and that's why I think we just need to make sure that we review it. Yes, take it out to its full 5 years, but we just need to keep an eye on other measures as well so that we can continue that public education and make it an incentive to get public right across the board to conserve our water. Thanks, Mr.
Further discussion? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I have an evaporative cooler, and I can only imagine that people use them because they are cheap to use in contrast to reverse cycle. And actually, I have at one end evaporative for bedrooms and all that, and at the other end reverse cycle, which generally I'll only use when it's boiling at the back area of the house. But that is the issue around our region. It's a fact that evaporative is a better form of cooling in dry heat and certainly more energy efficient. I realise they use a lot of water, and obviously to include them in the whole rebate scheme makes sense given their use of water. I'm 100% supportive of it. There's plenty out there, and there's plenty of elderly people that utilise evaporative coolers that, and as we've seen, throughout the recent summers when we've hit 40 degrees, they certainly obviously a godsend to the people that have them on their houses, if that's the only option of cooling that they have. So, I'm certainly 100% supportive of retaining that within the whole rebate scheme because they are important to the people that have them on their houses, and many of those people can't afford to replace them either with reverse cycle. And then, of course, you've got the conundrum of high electricity bills.
Any further discussion? Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just further to Councillor Tickle's comment, I'm just wondering whether there is any possibility in terms of trying to increase the uptake of audits by plumbers, whether or not there's a way we can highlight in the water bills that people have. And I know we get on there what we used last year and what we do now, but for those that perhaps have got quite a difference, whether or not we can actually impress on them that service is available. People may not know that it's available, so that we can then go, and then we can look at increasing the uptake of auditing and decreasing the uptake of maintenance, because I do agree that the maintenance is the owner's responsibility, but if we can highlight where they need to do it, it may be more beneficial.
Thanks, Councillor Coates. Bruce, do you want to make a comment on that?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Coates, the council's allocated money in the current budget to install automatic meter reading devices on, so your manually read meter is going to come out and an automatic meter reader is going to go in, and when that's finished, it'll take quite a long time. There's 22,000 metres in the council area. When that's finished, we will be able to look at people's daily consumption, and for argument's sake, between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. when you're probably not supposed to be using water, if the place is recording some water consumption, we'll be able to contact residents and say, we've seen that you might be using water at an unusual hour. If there's no obvious explanation for that, you might like to engage a plumber and see if you can find the leak that might be what that is indicating. So we'll be able to do that directly after we install these new meters, and I think that's probably the best way to address the plumbers' audits by actually notifying people when we see they've got a leak. In relation to the evaporative air conditioners, is a lot of. We believe that in Tamworth alone we've got 8,000 of evaporative air conditioners. The issue is that we're not advocating that people not use them, but what we're trying to encourage people to do is to maintain them on an annual basis, and that would minimise the amount of water that they're going to use when they do use them. I don't disagree with the councils. It's quite a lot of money, and if all 8,000 of them get maintained, it'll be a lot more than what we're seeing there. So, but at the moment, we need to think about what our goal is and what we're trying to achieve through that incentive, and advice from plumbers and people who work on these things is that at least it's a prompt for people to actually get someone to go up on the roof and have a look at their evaporative air conditioner. If it needs to be fixed, it's usually vastly more than $200, and they have to fund that obviously themselves, but at least we're getting people to actually go and have a look and make sure they're working. But as I say, if the council wants to review that at some stage in the future, we can certainly do that. A lot of money.
Thanks, Mr. Councillor South.
Just a question for you, Mr. Mayor. Do we actually promote these rebates on the water bills, or if not, they're like obviously on our website, but where else do we actually promote these savings that people can apply for?
Well, we promote them in many ways, but Bruce is probably better equipped to answer that.
So, Mr. Mayor, there are many opportunities for us to promote them, but in relation to the most recent promotion was before the start of summer this year. We did a specific promotion about evaporative air conditioning and maintenance, and obviously when we do promote one particular aspect, we also mentioned that there's a lot of other rebates available. They're always on our website, and you're right. We issue quarterly bills, and there's a strip down the side of the quarterly bill that we can use to promote whatever we feel is the current issue. A bit hard with the bills because they last for 3 months, so you've got to make sure that the issue that you're trying to address is relevant for the whole 3 months. But we can certainly put them on there, and we have done that on regular occurrences.
It's what we've been doing has seemed to have been working very well, and there has been a lot of school education programs in the past when it was a lot drier than it is now, but take on board, Councillor Blue.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering with regards to the financial implications of the scheme, that the scheme from February 09 to 21, December 21, cost the council a bit over $1 million. And it's estimated that if the scheme goes the next financial year, it would only cost between $50,000 and $100,000. Is that because, I'm not trying to answer the question, is that because there's so much of the rebates already gone into tanks that are not, and things like that, that there's no longer going to be required further assistance with the rebate, or is there another answer that I can't find in it?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor, we don't really know from one year to the next how popular the rebates are going to be. Certainly in dry times, they're much more popular than in the wet times, and because we are in a good period at the moment, we don't imagine there'll be a huge demand on the rebates over the next 12 months. But if the conditions change, then we have spent a lot more than $100,000 a year on rebates in drought periods.
Just to add to Mr. Logan's comments, I think there was a lot of people took up the options early in the piece, and there was a lot of people that had built homes and didn't have those tanks and other things, the shower heads and so forth, and they took those options up many years ago. And of course, as new homes are built now, with the basics requirements, as they have all these things. So I think that probably helps us a little bit in terms of reducing some of our potential expenditure in this area.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can make another comment, that's quite correct. We originally asked, we gave rebates for certain washing machines, etc., in 2007 when we started this. But the council elected to drop those out because we were finding that people were replacing their washing machine that we'd given a rebate for them into another one, and we were just virtually reducing the cost of their appliances. So we don't offer some of those rebates anymore.
Further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move on to item 9.1, council investments. Someone move that recommendation? Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor Rodder. Discussion. Councillor Tickle, did you want to speak to that?
Again, thanks to the staff for keeping such a watchful eye on our finances and keeping them in good shape, and we've got supporting information attached, so I won't actually refer to that, but we have the ongoing problem of virtually nil interest on our deposits, a problem faced by all businesses, so that over the last couple of years has had an impact, but no, thank you to the staff for the excellent reports.
Councillors, anyone want further discussion? Councillor Southwell.
This was just more of a question as a new councillor, just in terms of just a general question around how we determine those percentages in terms of like which banks we use. Is it based around, like what's it based around? How do we determine, you know, how we basically disperse those funds? And obviously CBA has 48% of our investments. Why is that? And, you know, just in general, not in depth, but that would be great.
Councillor Southwell, I was going to actually ask Cheryl, through the General Manager, if she could just make some comments, just so that the new councillors understand some of our financial processes and what we do. It's probably a good opportunity to do that now when we don't have a big business paper in front of us.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Council actually has an investment policy, and in that policy it outlines who we can invest with. So basically...
Sorry, you couldn't just come forward a little?
So basically in Australia, financial institutions have a credit rating. So in our investment policy, and it's also governed by the Office of Local Government with regards to their investment order, it says council can invest 100% of their portfolio with AAA or A+ rated institutions. So basically we limit who we invest with, and how much we can invest depends on the financial institution's credit rating. What we do is we invest our money. When that money matures, we actually ring up various banks and various institutions and we say, hey, we've got $5 million that we want to invest in a term deposit. What rate can you do for us? So it's a bit like a quotation process that Murray might go through for his roads. We actually get on the phone, ring round and see what best return we can get at the time. In determining how much money we've got with the Commonwealth Bank, we go, righto, we've got $80 million with the Commonwealth Bank. We divide that by our total, over the top of our total investments, and that gets us the percentage of how much we have with each financial institution. I literally sent an email out today. I think we're about due to review our investment policy again. It has to be done annually, but that's how it's determined. So each institution has a credit rating. We can invest so much with each credit rating. We ring up, we get a quote, we determine how much we've got with each and divide that over our total investments to come up with a percentage.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Did you want to pass any further comment? Councillors, I'll make a little comment, and that is that I believe that this council, the Tamworth Regional Council, I can only speak for the Tamworth Regional Council, has been served magnificently by our financial staff. We've gone through many ups and downs, and in particular we went through the GFC some years ago, I think around 2008. But this council was in a very good position before that and came out of it in a very good position. And I think financially, I really do take my hat off to the work that the financial staff do, because we are sound, and we wouldn't be as sound as we are if it wasn't for the work that's done by that team. So thank you, Cheryl. Further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 9.2. This is a similar report, but the December report. Mover and the seconder. Move Councillor Tickle. Seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Tickle, further discussion? No. Anyone further discussion? Further discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Move on to 9.3, Annual Operational Plan Budget Variation Report. Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Berg. Councillor Betts, would you like to speak to that? Anyone want to speak against that recommendation? Any further discussion?
Did you want Cheryl to explain those columns?
Yes, I am going to ask that you man, thank you. Again, Cheryl, I'm glad you got your mask off, because I am going to ask you to come forward again, if you may, with our 5 new councillors, just to talk a little bit about on page 28 what some of those columns mean and how that all works, because it is very complex. 1029.
Yeah, it can be quite complex. So at the moment, finance staff are working on the budget for the next coming financial year, and that gets approved by the council. What we do every month is we go through and we present to council budget adjustments that might have happened, that weren't approved in that original budget. So we might get some more green income. We've got one in there, a potential insurance claim of $100,000. Things that come in out of the blue, chopping down trees, that sort of thing that need to be disposed of. So what we actually do is we put those budget adjustments through to you guys, and when we're doing this, we classify them into operational income, operational expenditure. So that's your day-to-day stuff. That has an impact in any given financial year. Your capital income and your capital expenditure, the benefits of those actually last longer than 12 months. So it's usually when we're building some sort of infrastructure or we're buying some sort of information software. A lot of the times that capital income comes in the form of grants, and when you go to the attachments, and I actually think the attachments are probably more important there, the thing you need to focus on is where did the money come from? So did it come from grants? Did it come from our internal savings? So one of the things we're putting forward to you guys later on as we go through the budget process is we need to save for things that are going to happen in the future. So Murray's got a very, picking on Murray, but he's got a very extensive road network out there. We've got $1 billion worth of assets. So we need to save to do repairs and maintenance and carry out replacement of those assets. So to me, the most important thing as councillors that you need to be asking yourselves is, where is the money going to come from for both the day-to-day expenditure and income, which is your operational stuff, and your long-term stuff, which is your capital expenditure and your capital income. But this report should not be looked at in isolation. It's only a snapshot for the month. It's when we put up for you next month the quarterly budget review. It gives you the bigger overall picture. So this is just so you guys can keep tabs on what's going on through the year, what developments are taking place. Hopefully that helps. It is very complex. It can be hard to get your head around. But any questions? Just ask.
Thank you, Cheryl. That's great. Any councillors got any questions of Cheryl? We've got the opportunity. No. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? No, there being no further discussion, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We move from there on to item 10. I've lost here. Item 9.4, budget variation for December. Someone move that? Councillor Tickle, second to Councillor Berg. You want to speak to that, Councillor Tickle? Any discussion? There being no discussion, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We move from there into community services, item 10, and there's nothing in community services, so we move to item 11 for reports to be considered in closed council. So I'll be calling for a motion to close the council, to close the meeting in a minute to the public, but I'd ask and there's no members of the public, so I don't have to ask, no members of the public at all. Because normally we'd ask if there are any members of the public want to make any representations on any of the items in closed business, do they think they should be moved into public? And I would then ask the General Manager if you had any submissions for any of those items to be moved into the general meeting. So I'd ask for somebody to move a recommendation to Councillor Berg, seconded Councillor Betts. Those in favour? General Manager to report on the recommendations from the closed council.
There won't be anybody out there because there was nobody here to start with, was it?
No.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is the report from the closed section of the ordinary council meeting held on the 25th of January 2022. You only considered 2 items in closed council tonight. For both of those items, you adopted the recommendations as per the business paper. Motion to accept.
Councillor Betts, motion to accept?
Yeah.
Seconded. Councillor Burke, all those in favour? Councillors, that basically concludes our first meeting as a new council. Well, thank you for that. But I would ask in closing the meeting that if, Jackie, if you could close that door again,